Okay, I logged into VLAN. So working now. Like this. No other option. So you need to make sure that everything is displaying on the project. It's like you need to maintain recording for the web stream. Why? So do you prefer the radio means or no, because this is important for recordings. So you have to pick something, either this or the Apple one.
Yeah, I would use it after you. Maybe you want to use it. Just give me 1 minute to set. Ready to go?
Whoa, it's not a good idea to use this one. It's already
What
empty.
about this one? Just like this. Is it connected?
Yeah, just need to enable.
So there's no chair for me.
Yes, they don't have chairs. Okay, good evening everyone. We're gonna start the lecture now. So today we're gonna have a hands-on activity for Hadoop presented to you by Muhammad Ali here. He's our industrial expert on Hadoop. So hopefully I see that that's a good thing. Everyone's having their laptop so that you can walk through the activity as yourself, and you can continue the activity if you get stuck somewhere or you need debugging, because unfortunately due to the volume of the class we cannot provide instant support currently for everyone. So if you get stuck somewhere, just memorize it, try to keep up, and you can go to the labs starting next week to get extra support or debug things. So for the students who have if your lab is on Monday, which is a public holiday, then feel free to attend other labs. The labs are not mandatory, so I don't expect they are going to be full for all the labs. Or if needed, if we need to spin out an additional lab, we'll do that the coming Friday, because Friday there is no lab slot. So let's see how things go, and if needed, we can spin up an additional lab on Friday. Okay, so I don't want to take more time, so let's start with the activity with Muhammad Ali.
So hello everyone and welcome to the tutorial session today. So most of you may know me from the other courses or from the tutorials for Java. So today I'm going to use Hadoop to do a very simple thing, a hello world in Hadoop, which is word count. And we are going to count the words inside the text file. It seems easy, but imagine that we have a very big file, like 1 terabyte of data. And then you have a cluster of computers, not one. One solution is to only use your single computer and start coding in your favorite language, which is usually Python. And it would take lots of time, and maybe because of the limitation of your hardware, you won't be allowed to finish your job. So that is why we have Hadoop. So in Hadoop ecosystem, we have a cluster of computers, and they are connected to each other. We write a code, and then we submit our code to the cluster. Then the cluster itself, the Hadoop cluster, will manage to run our code and then produce the output. So before doing the activity, I would ask you to imagine that you have a very big file. So let's say that you have a very big file, a text file, and it is 1 terabyte. So if I want to process this data and calculate the number of each word in the text, I can manually divide the file into some parts. Imagine that I have 4 computers and I divide this file into 4 pieces. So piece 1, 2, 3, 4. What can I do is that I can just ask a single computer to deal with only a simple, just one part of the data instead of the whole part. So I can, for example, calculate that there are like 108 in the first part, there are like 90 of P in the first part. We can also calculate the same for the second part, like A 200, B like 50, and the rest. So we can do this, don't we? But if we want to calculate the total number of each word in the whole file, we need to add these numbers by aggregating them. For example, we need to add all the counts of A, which is 100 plus 200 plus, and for the B. So this is the process that I can do without using any big data, technology. I can divide the file. I can just calculate the count of each word in each part. Then I can sum up the values. MapReduce does exactly the same, but automatically. You don't need to take care of splitting the file into parts and then broadcasting the file to the computer that you want to work on, and then at the end, calculation of the sum for each word. But we need to define how we can map our files to these intermediate structures. So we need to first define what are our keys, which here are our words, and what are the values. So these are called key, and these are called values. At the second phase, we need to go and aggregate the intermediate files by just based on our needs. For example, in the word count, we need to add them up. But in another case, you might do something else. So let's start with the coding. So please open your laptops and your virtual lab to CSC machines, because I'm going to use the same environment that you have access to. If you want to use your own operating system, please don't do it, especially if you are using Windows. But in Linux, it is fine if you don't log into the CSC machines, as long as you have installed Eclipse and Java compiler. So please open the Eclipse. And start with creating a new project in Eclipse by going to the File menu, New, and Java Project. So you need to give a name to your project, like hello word count. Next, please go to this URL here and download the dependency that I have put in GitHub. So if you join the Java tutorials, you already knew that how you can add a dependency to your project in Eclipse. If not, don't worry, I will again repeat it here. So please first download the dependency, this hadoop-core.jar, and put it somewhere. So if you are done with downloading the file, go back to your project, right-click on the project name, and go to the build path and add external archives. Usually for running a Hadoop job, you need to add lots of dependencies. But because I wanted to make this example very easier for you, I created a single file called hadoop-core.jar. So it contains all of the things that you need for doing this exercise. And it would be enough for your assignment as well. So please add the file, the Hadoop core, to your dependencies. It should be appear here in your project, in the libraries. Okay, next please right click on the source folder and then create a new class. I will call it word count. And also, please check this checkbox, public static void main, which is the main entry point of any Java application. So please import this class called job from, so if you see the screen, there are two imports suggested by Eclipse. Please click on the second one, so the shorter import. So this will be added to your class now. So we are going to create a job on Hadoop cluster. So that is why I am instantiating an instance of this class. So I need to provide a config file, and also I can give it a name like wordconf. So why it is important to give our jobs a name? Because in the cluster, there will be like lots of other jobs running simultaneously on the same cluster. So if you want to access and know what is your job, then giving it a name can help. Moreover, when you want to get an instance of a job in Hadoop, it may throw some exceptions. Either you need to use try catch and then wrap this get instance with try catch, or just simply through the exception. It means that you don't handle the exception, and if any error happens, then it will drop the job. So in MapReduce, there are two phases, map and reduce. So I need to specify that what is the class for the mapping and also what is the class for reducing phase. So I need to say set a mapper class. I haven't created my mapper class. Later I will do, but I just give it a name like my mapper. So later I will implement this class. Likewise, we need to also set the reducer class, and I will call it my reducer dot class. So let's keep these two for later to implement. At the moment, I just told the MapReduce that I have a class called myMapper, which is used for mapping the input to the middle values. And then I have a class called myReducer, which is used for reducing, like aggregating the middle values to the final output. So what are my outputs? So everything in MapReduce is key and value. Here, my output would be a string, which is a word, and also an integer or a line. An integer showing the total number of words in the text box. So job.set output key. So the key is text, and the output value is integer. So here you cannot use primitive data types or Python classes for the key and value. All of the key and values that you are defining, they must implement an interface called writable. So because you are going to write these values on HDFS or any other file system that you pick. So that is why we need to use text for writing our keys as a string, and then int writable for the total number of words for each word. So here I defined my output, but I didn't tell the MapReduce what is my input. My input is a text file, yeah? It's a text file containing lines of text. I need to say that my input file format is text. So I need to say job.set input format class, which is text file format, I guess. Text input format. So it is text input format. Dot class. Next, I need to give the file that I want to process to the cluster. So here I define that I have a job and I want to pass this file. So I am passing the file using these arguments in the main function. So I assume that the first item, the first element in the arguments, it would be the input file. Then I need to specify also the file output format. And set output path. So where should I put my result, my output? I need to define it. So it is also given by the arguments from the main function. I assume that it is the second item. Then I am ready to just run my job. But first I need to implement the mapper and reducer classes to map this input to these values, and then the reducer for converting the values in the on the board to the output. So I'm going to create a new class inside this public class. So that is why I would use this public static keyword class my mapper, which extends mapper class. So I need to define my input type and also the output of the mapper. So what is the input type? It is based on this text input format. And this class reads this file and creates my input to the mapper. So by default, this class, the text input format, creates the input for the mapper by line, writable, and a string. The line writable shows the offset of each text, and the text is the text value from the text itself. We usually don't care about the first one because it is just the offset of the text inside the file, which is not very usable in our example. So it is just line writable, and the value is text. This is the key and value for the input. So my input it is like line 1, let's say, and some text, line 2, some text, 3, some text, yeah? So this is my input, which is created by this class text input format. Then what are my outputs for the mapper? It is text and integer, yeah? So I'm defining it here by text and int writable. So I have a class called mapper, and it inherits from the mapper class, with these being the input and output types for the keys and values. Next, please click inside the new class and then right click, go to source, and then click on the override and implementation methods, because I am going to override a method from the upper class mapper, which is called map. So go to source and then override implement methods. Click. Then here you can check the map function, because I'm going to re-implement the map function based on my need, which is calculating the count of each word. Click OK, and it should generate this function. I'm going to remove 2 lines, which are automatically generated and we don't need. So, yes. Show what? Again? Just click on the inside the class, right click, go to the source, and then override and implement methods. And here click on the map, and excuse me? So make sure that you can just generate this function. If you can't, it is still okay if you write it yourself. So you want to see the end of the line? Yes. Maybe you are clicking on the wrong place. So make sure that you first import all of the classes that you see here. If there is a red line under any class name, it means that you haven't imported it. So you cannot override anything. You see here, I have already imported all of the classes. So I don't do it manually. I use Eclipse by just right click and import. So for example, imagine that you don't know this mapper. And there's a red line here, yeah? right click, just click and wait. Then there should be like this box, and you need to click on the org.apache.hadoop.mapreduce. And done. It should automatically import the class.
If you're moving away, try to take this guy with you. Yeah, no. It's just like if you're going to the board. Here, I think it's good. No.
But I'm trying to just shout.
But this guy, I don't know why it's not charging. Should be on that level. Alright, if you want to use this one. Charged half way. Back pocket is the best.
Yes, please. You want to see how I imported the class? Yeah, if you want to double check, you can just look at here. There are sometimes two imports for the same class. Make sure that you are importing the same passes that I have here. So there shouldn't be any map read in the pass. So all of them should be map reduce. So there are like some passes with map read. Don't import them. Pick those one with map reduce inside. By definition, it is writable, but in the name it has no like text. It is not. The name is not text writable, but it has implemented the writable interface. So that is why it is writable. So if you want to use a text in MapReduce, you need to use text. If you want to use integers, you need to use int writable, and it is clear, like lang writable. And you can also define your own writable classes, which we will do in the next session. Okay, let's proceed. Let's think what we are going to do in the mapper class. We need to generate these, these values, like keys and values. Yeah. So the idea of having a mapper is to map this input to something like this, key and value. And the key is text, and the value is int writable integer. So it means that for a given text like this value, so I know that if MapReduce reads my file, the text will be inside this text value. Yeah. So I need to split this value into words, in the tokens. Like I can do it with value.toString. And split by, for example, space. So the result should be an array. So the text is not a string. If I want to get the string inside the text, I need to use this the value .toString. So this method toString will just return the text value inside this object. So next, I need to iterate over the tokens and create like this. I need to create values like A1, B1. It is okay. Later maybe I see another word like A and I say A again 1. Later, because I want to reduce these keys and values, like reducing to A and 2, I will just sum up the values with the same key. So don't worry, we are just going to iterate like token in tokens. Then I need to create my output, and it can be done by this context.write. So the key would be my token here. I need to create a new text, and its value is the token. I need to also create integer writable, and the value is, its value should be 1. It means that I have seen one of these token. Unfortunately, the import of text in my code was wrong, so make sure that you import the correct version from Hadoop. We need to import from org like Apache hadoop.io. So it was not writable. It was text from some other libraries. So imagine that now you have this mapper and it creates like A1, B1, A1. And this is done in the same machine. Like same machine which is processing this text has like A1 and A1 again. So it is better to combine these values like A1 and A1 in the same machine instead of, producing the output and sending it to the reducer. Because we can do it easily in the same machine. But later we need to do it between different machines, yeah? So that is why we can have also combiners in Hadoop. So I can say that my job also has this combiner class, which is the same as my reducer class. They do the same. They just aggregate the values for different words. But the combiner class, which is the same as reducer class, they do it in the same machine, so that the output of the mapper would be combined by this combiner class, but the reducer class will aggregate the outputs from all of the machines. So that is the difference. But because they are doing the same, I'm using the same class for both of the tasks. So the mapper was simple. We just tokenize our text, then create the keys and values like words. Here I am writing like letters, but actually these are words like this, like is, yeah? Again, one. So this will be the output of the mapper class, like words and values. Then the combiner will combine and aggregate these values, and there will be like A and 2, this 1, and the rest. So let's define our reducer class then. Again, I need to say public static class called my reducer, which implements, which extends, because it is a class, extends reducer. So the reducer this time will accept as input text and int writable, because it is the output of the mapper. So the input would be text and int writable, and it would generate again text and int writable. So the two of classes are used for showing the key and values for the input, and the next two classes, they show the key and value for the output. Because our mapper generates the words and their count, so we know that the input is text and integer, and we also know that the output at the end should be the same, like the words and their count. So that is why we have like text int writable and text int writable again. Then again, please right click, go to the source and override methods. And this time we are going to implement the reduce function. We are going to override this reduce function, which is used for just aggregating the keys and values. So this is my token actually, or word. The second one is the list of values. So I'm just using values. Then this is just the context. So I renamed the parameters of our method because it was auto-generated and not human readable. So please, you can also change for later because it would show you what is this, for example, the first argument, which is a word. So what does Hadoop is that the Hadoop just sends all of the keys and values with the same key to this reduce function. So it means that anything sent to this function is related to a single word. We don't care about multiple words. There is only single words and a list of values, like for example, A1, A2, A100, A102. So what we need to do is just calculate the sum of values inside this list. So I define this sum starting from 0. Then I need to iterate over my values. And then sum would be sum plus the value dot get. Dot get will return the integer inside this int writable. And the output of the reducer is again text, the same word, and this time the sum of its values. So it would be a like new int writable with this sum. Yes, please. Context. So it is used for writing the outputs into HDFS or any other file system. So if you just pay attention here, you will see that we are using context only for writing our output. So anything in MapReduce is written on HDFS or any other disk. So HDFS is just a Hadoop distributed file system, so it is just a file system. But what Hadoop does is to read the file, generates these keys and values, then all of these keys and values are stored in the HDFS. Then they will be sent to reducers based on their keys, and the reducer will apply this function, which is reduce, and calculate the sum of the values inside this list, which is sent by the MapReduce framework to this function. Then at the end, again, we need to write our output in HTFS, and it is done by this context.write. So this context.write will store our output, which is a word and its sum of values. And this will be done for all of the words. You write the function for a single word, but this is the MapReduce's job to call your function over and over for all of the words. So it simplifies everything. So this is the code for the word count, and there is nothing else. So let's try running our code. So if you pay attention here, we have like two arguments, 0 and 1. We need to pass because they are the input file and also the output of our application. I need to specify these arguments. And in Eclipse, if you just run your application, for this you need to right click on the file and then go to the run as Java application. Please do this and you will see an error, like an exception, because we haven't defined our input. So let's define our input and output. Click on this icon here and then run configurations. Then in the new window, click on the arguments and just give the path for your input. Let's say we have an input like input.txt and it has an argument, output argument like output. So let's create the input file now. I'll create it here. I just created a text file by copying and pasting some materials from the internet. Then I save it in my project. I call it input.txt. then save. So I need to pass the address for this file for my application. So I do it with using this run configuration and arguments. I said that there is an input and output like this. So it is the same directory as my project. So if I run the project and I refresh this folder, you will see that there is a new directory called output, the same as the name that you specified in the arguments. And here is a single file called part R0. So if you open the file, you will see the output of your MapReduce. Because I used just information from the internet, so the output is not very clear. So let's go to somewhere to grab some information. Okay. So if you want to run your code again, first of all, you need to get rid of the previous output. So I remove it, then I execute my application again. I refresh my project, so there is a new output. And here is the output of WordCamp. So for example, in the UNSW page in Wikipedia, there are 3 instances of research. There are 4 instances of the So who was able to produce an output? Nice. So I am done with the tutorials, but I will be here to help to figure out if you had any problem. So thank you for the listening and attending the lecture.
So just before we close, so we're gonna be here for the students who have completed and generated an output successfully. Excellent. You are free to go. For the others who want to debug what's happening, we are here to help you debug. And hopefully we have roughly half an hour to help you with that. And if you are still, after this half an hour, haven't reached that, we will put the document for the activity on WebCMS, so you can also do it on your own time and come to the lab for debugging and extra support. Yeah, so and like this lecture is recorded, so you can also refer back to the lecture recording and like trace what are the steps that you didn't do properly and how you can do it efficiently. Okay. Thank you very much, and we'll be here to help. So if you have any question, please come down and we'll help you with that.
It was like I manually like to accept
simple question. If you run it twice, right, so already running fine. If you run it twice, you just need to remove the output. Okay, and I set it to overwrite, or is it out
Hence it to go to the main one, yeah. Because I missed
so I can't set it to overwrite.
Yeah, thank you.
Like ideally, because like here we are putting the file in the same folder, but ideally like you're gonna have more cluster and then you can have output one, output two. You can set it up as more than one output, but it's not gonna do it automatically.
Thank you.
So let's see what's the error that we get. Input path does not exist. In that sense, but we need to just make sure that we have configuration. Oh, yeah. How do you right click? Just refresh. Do refresh. Scroll.
You.
So just scroll down. Input path so it's still complaining that the input path does not exist.
So if the input, the file is not. Do I need to remove this?
Okay, oh yes. So do it inside word count. Yes, so the main. Okay, so you put it input.text.
Maybe it needs to change the name. It's already in here.
Yes, it is in here, but it is cascaded under the reference
I
library.
can. I delete it.
Let me say,
I create. Here?
Like on the word count folder, in the main folder. Yep. So right click, new, text. Text, and I'll leave it on the main. Just change the name.
Or input your text.
Dot text. Yeah. Just refresh because if you've already generated an output, just open it, double click.
Why are you using it? Why? So it's already here.
So it is output, but why you are not
I don't know why.
double click it? There should be two files, one success and one giving you the results.
I delete it.
Delete it and do it again.
Refresh.
Run. Just refresh. And now refresh. Can you look? Let's see if there is any error. If there is an error. Scroll down. So it should be working.
So it should be working.
Yes.
Okay.
Because there is no error. Like once there is an error, you can trace it back.
Okay, but it didn't show any errors.
Just a sec. Where is the? Can you remove it?
Delete?
Just delete it. Yep. And go to run configuration. Delete it. Yeah. Okay. Run configuration. Go to the configuration. Arguments. So you have
That
no. Because it's gonna create a folder. So say run. Just refresh. Because like it's telling you it's a folder, you should be able to go in. Why you are not able to go in?
maybe it's
No. If you want, you can, like, but it doesn't. Like, even if there is nothing at all, it's gonna give you nothing.
okay, fine. I will try.
There is no
another.
restriction that my producer say, "Are you kidding me?" There is not enough. It's not gonna complain.
Okay, I will try.
So just try probably because try not in terms like because there is no error message. Just go through it one by one. Try to see if there is any. I can't see any error message.
然后你储值的话，一定是必须得一定的。对，然后你也可以像正常电脑一样。
Have you seen this error? Like,
对，你只要传出来之后，你就把这个看这样。
Executed that. So what? It's in stage. Okay. Did you? Can you go to configuration? Yep. Click on the arrow. Yep. So within the work count, yep, work count, run configuration, arguments. So is this the name of?
oh, sorry.
烙印的是烙印把这个烙印的是印的。然后如果传的是一个列表，就是那个 ID 就是可迭代的，对，就是有。刚才那个不是有后用吗？那个 values 就是那个 readable。I think it's okay. Yeah. 但好像是那个是强后用，就有点像那个 Java 一样。没有，它也是。 它是这个 incredible 之类的。哦，冒号 thank you。Thank you. I want to know what does it mean to set the combiner class? I know what reducer class is.
Yeah. So what we talked about, if you remember in the lecture, so when you are trying to find like within the first part of the document, when we split, we said that MapReduce split the document to smaller parts. So this is providing an intermediate results. So it's telling you that in this first part, car is mentioned 10 times, or like car 1, bear 1, bear 1, bear 1. So the combiner is like a small intermediate reducer. So it's gonna do is say the car 3 for first document, bear 2 for first document. So it's more like, that's why it inherits the same reducer. It's the combining a
Or a small reducer between the macro and
exactly. So it's an intermediary reducer that does this aggregation in the middle level. That's why it inherits the reducer class. It's not something new. It's a reducer, but it's more like in the middle, not giving you the final result. It's giving you an intermediary.
Oh, it will aggregate the data from the macro and the
within one cluster. So it's giving you an aggregation within one cluster. For the main reducer, let's say the final reducer, is gonna aggregate on all the clusters.
Okay, I get it. I get it. Okay,
So it's a reducer. You can think about it. It's a reducer on the machine, on a small machine level.
so I just can review the normal reducer responsible for
All the cluster.
all the cluster and throw the final result.
Exactly.
And the combiner, they
The
just
combiner is more like a smaller intermediary reducer.
reduce. Okay.
So just like they are trying to enhance performance, so rather than you wait for the final reducer to do all the aggregation, you're providing aggregation or smaller levels, and then the final reducer do the final aggregation on all clusters. Like this is like now when we are talking smaller files or smaller cluster, you will not feel it, but once let's say your file is in terabytes and your cluster is 1,000 nodes, that will increase the performance when you have this intermediary reducer.
So the second question is what does this set input format? I don't know what that is.
Sorry, what do you want?
The
Study
set input
format.
input format.
Function.
Set input format.
What that is?
So for you, like when you're creating your MapReduce program, you need to tell it what is my input, because like usually MapReduce is gonna take a raw input, which is here text. It's gonna put it as the key value pairs, so this is the part of the mapper. So you need to tell it that, okay, I'm giving you series of words, we call it tokens, and I want you to provide this token plus an int writable, which is here 111, the hard-coded number 1111.
So this function is just
So just like you need to define, this is what I'm giving you, this is what I expect to give you, expect you to give me. Then the reducer also the same. This is I'm gonna give you these words with the hard code 1111, and I expect you to give me these tokens and their final aggregation. So you need to tell MapReduce what am I feeding you and what I expect you to give me back. So you need to all for mapper and reducer functions. The classes, you need to tell them what is the input and what is the output.
okay. I think I get it. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, so it is definitely possible, but because I took over the course last moment, so I couldn't find tutors that are familiar with Hadoop Python. So for me, it's more like it's definitely possible. There are libraries, but for the setup of this course on this level, we are sticking with Java because there are already people helping with Java for Hadoop. For future offerings, we might consider Python because we already have data science using Python, so it's possible that we integrate the both courses. So here it's more like management for data that we prepare everything for data science. So currently we are stuck with Java, but there is possible offering in the future to go with Java with Python. Yeah, there are libraries for Python. So Hadoop provides libraries for C, for Python, for Ruby, and for Java. So it is there. From technology perspective, it is doable. So Hadoop is working, is built using Java. So Hadoop is gonna be built using Java, but you as because currently what we are doing, we're just taking the Java classes, we inherit some things of them, and we make them do what we want. So you can do the same using Python, like there is a library for Python, you import these Python classes, and then you configure the mapper and the reducer to do whatever you want. So there is no much difference. It's like you're importing these classes and then you're creating your mapper and your reducer to do the job. So from that perspective, it's definitely possible to use Python. But, we're not reinventing. Hadoop is still written using Java. We are not going to change that. But how you invoke Hadoop is you're using Python libraries. What is, sorry, what?
What is research?
Oh, okay. So I'm specializing in cybersecurity. So for us, it's like I'm more into vulnerability discovery, how to use the cloud for vulnerability discovery. So part of this very integrated with data science and big data, because like everything in the cybersecurity realm is like log files, attacks, all this are raw data that at some point what I need to do is make sure that I draw some useful insights from this data. That's why I'm interested in data science. But like my area of research is cybersecurity. No, it's not difficult. Like once, like I'm not telling you that I'm expert in everything cybersecurity. No, I'm more like vulnerability discovery. So this thing I am passionate about. I have general knowledge in the other area of cybersecurity, but this is my area. But like there are things like you need some tooling, because it's not like I'm not only discovering vulnerabilities, I want to find better ways to do it. So according to that, you find your passion. No worries, thank you.
So do you remember I told everyone to download the file? Are you sure it is not the same as the last one?
Because I tested.
No, it should be the same. Yeah, because you don't know what to import. That is why I have created it. If I wanted to say that everyone should just download the real Hadoop core, then they needed to download so many other dependencies for the Hadoop. So that's why I created a single file which contains everything.
For example,
For simplicity.
yep, sure.
So you know how I think when I was creating this project at the very start, I just randomly clicked on create under the temporary file, right? It's temporary folder.
Yeah, there is a source folder
Yes.
at the beginning, so you need to click and create the class inside the source.
Oh no, that's in the entire project. How do I?
It can be anywhere.
Anyway, so how do I export it? Because I try to click on
You don't need to export it, it is located in your workspace. Just copy.
Okay.
And you can open it with Eclipse easily.
Okay, so I don't have to worry about saving it on the.
No, it is already saved on the list.
Okay. Hello.
So if you have done you have done the activity, so you have already the code. It is located in the workspace. Just look at the workspace of your Eclipse, and you will find the location exactly.
I still need to read through the script because I'm just basically following whatever you do. I don't.
Don't worry, in next week we will have more labs and tutors will help you to just figure out if you have
At the moment, it's like playing around with the syntax, like but I don't understand what's the meaning behind each thing.
Yeah, the point is that you need to know a lot about Java
Yes.
to know what I am really doing. If you attended the tutorial, so it would help, because I did cover some of the important parts in the tutorials for Java.
Yes.
But don't worry, it is pretty easy if you just get the grasp of what I did,
Yes.
then imagine what is going on a cluster of computers, not a single computer, then you can easily get right
Okay.
with the code.
maybe master.
Okay. I'll reach through the thing and then on the lab I can ask questions. Yes. Thank you.
You're not gonna see any nodes. You're gonna see like
Hello?
there is internally
The output format. So the output directory input that you
But
already
there are no upload folder.
But from your perspective as a developer, you don't care what's happening. That's why people like to do, because it's abstract on the headache of how things are being done.
Spark is similar, right?
No, Spark is not about similar, it's part of the ecosystem. What it's gonna do is like Hadoop, because what it's doing is it's relying on files that store in HDFS. So with let's say 1 terabyte file, so that's possible.
Yeah,
But
should
when
be
you're
one.
running that, the calculation is more like a batch job. So you are submitting the job, and then the result will come. Spark helps you with stream data.
Real time.
So yes, so you have a stream of data rather than, because like it's not possible for you to mention. Yeah, so Spark is gonna try to put the data in the memory so that it can allow you to ask that question.
It is the main difference. So here, we run, if you remember, I told everything is written on disk, on HDFS.
Yes.
So it is slow.
Yeah.
So if you want to just use your memory, you need to do it manually, like having some thread, just doing everything yourself. But in Spark, it abstracts the memory as well. So it says you to that, don't worry, just process, I will manage the memory as well. But in Hadoop, you need to just create, for example, if you want to have like high performance Hadoop projects, you need to, inside your mappers and reducers, you need to have like multi-threading to use the CPUs of your system. But with Spark, you can easily do these things. It is abstract.
We will use also Java for Spark or another language?
Yeah, Java.
So Java as well. So like some people prefer Scala, but we're gonna try to stick with this because we already have trouble with people trying to learn Java. So we don't want to introduce a new language.
Scala I think is similar to Java?
Yeah, it's very similar. There are similarities, but
Most of them are based on JVM, but the syntax is different. So, and it is not similar to any language. Java is similar to C++. So most of the students can just get Java code easily, but it is not for Scala.
yeah,
So it is not similar to any language that you have written.
Yeah, even we have less time, 3 trimesters.
yeah, so we try to make stay with Java as much as possible so that at least like the people who are more comfortable there will not have the urge to learn something. So let's stick with Java. My ideal way of doing things is like let's do everything in Python. But that's a different story.
Every Thursday you come in.
Yes, it will be active hands-on. So we have the theory on Tuesday, and then the activities on Thursday, and then you have the labs.
These are the arguments that pass to the arguments that have to be functions.
The labs for next week is about
Here, the slide.
continue on Econ, and then for next week we have a new activity, and then the labs.
So you can also specify the output breaks. Very good.
So you have some time to we'll try it now for some people who got stuck. It's like not debug for everyone.
So you put my all my clothes in.
We also have some challenges for the labs if you want, so for the people who want to do some additional things, so we'll add some challenges so on top of this activity as well.
Right. Thank you. Thank you.
Work, that's good for you. Yeah, you can use it.